Once again, everybody, welcome to the event today at AWS Reinforce. For a short, brief introduction, I'm Derek Williams, Federal Account Sales Manager for AWS, and I cover the Department of Commerce for AWS. We welcome you once again to this event, Automating Security and Compliance with OSCAL. We'll be featuring Department of Commerce's NIST world-renowned and their very own Dr. Michaela Iorga. She will be here as our first featured speaker. She's the co-chair and the director of OSCAL and the NIST lead for cloud security. Everybody, please give her a round of applause. Dr. Michaela Iorga. And next, after Dr. Iorga, will be Matthew Donkin. He's from AWS, one of our VIPs. He's the Security Assurance Manager, and he's the lead for the OSCAL program. Please give him a round of applause, too. We like giving applauses here. And finally, to wrap it up, we have another VIP, our very own Amber Pearson from AWS, and she's the head of security engagement and also one of the security and technical leads for the OSCAL program. Let's give Amber a hand, too. Once again, to get us started, Dr. Iorga.
Thank you very much, Derek, and welcome everyone. Let me get my clicker and be ready. So how many of you heard of OSCAL? I'm trying to raise hand. That's good, this side is good. This is also okay. How about that side of the room? Anyone knows what OSCAL stands for? It's Open Security Controls Assessment Language. The last word in there is very, very important, and you'll see why. But before we dive a little bit into the technical aspects of this language, I want to give you a little bit of background. Why did I have to start this project? Why I felt that this project is important? And probably you've been in similar situations as well. So on February 8th, 2011, I was with National Institute of Standards and Technologies when the federal CIO signed the cloud computing strategy. We're referring to that as Cloud First. That caused a lot of confusion, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of frustration, because being responsible, coming from NIST, to guide government to move the very first 3 services were within 6 months, and then another 3 within 18 months, to a technology, to cloud computing that they did not understand, was very challenging. So we had agencies that were saying, hooray, then we are no longer responsible for FISMA, is that right? No, you are still responsible, because it's your data. And then there were other agencies that were coming from the totally opposite direction, saying, absolutely not, I'm going to give my data to any cloud service provider. Who are they? I need to see what they are doing. I need to put my nose in and verify every single corner of their systems. I need to understand it. So had exactly the same year, AWS, we're promoting at NIST, cloud computing, of course, educational. And I had Bill Murray from AWS, and I had an audience a little bit, interactive, not very formal, a little bit more than here today. And at the end, we had a very nice conversation. That was actually on security and forensic. But we had several entities there that were very aggressively questioning him why he's not opening all the doors, show everything on their infrastructure, for them to assess that, for them to properly understand it, to be able to transfer their data to use their service. And his reaction was very normal, and an epiphany probably to many of them. I said, well, if I allow you, sir, to see everything, to come there and spend a month, and if I have to allow this gentleman here, Hassan, and I have to allow the other one to see everything we are doing, to know our technology, I have to allow everybody that is pretending that wants to use the service, would you still feel secure if you move your data? If so many people know everything about it? So they understood that that's not possible, that we had to deal with a new trust model that we had to put in place, and that the solution to that was actually security automation. So what we try also to do prior to that was FedRAMP was established, and that was established 10 months on the dot, December 8th, I remember the date of the same year when OMB signed the memorandum saying that FedRAMP is established. The purpose was assess once, very deeply, using three PAOs, and then all agencies will be able to have that information available for review for their consumption. But the process was very lengthy because everything was paper-based. They were doing very rigorous work. So month and month of frustration from cloud service providers, frustration from the three PAOs as well that were trying to learn the technology. So again, how could we help? We need government agencies and cloud service providers, all our partners, to do better. Security automation was the answer. So you are here today because you actually know that we are faced with the same challenges, that information technology is very complex, that security issues, vulnerabilities are everywhere, sometimes are not even discoverable, so we have to deal with them, we have to be ready. We have so many regulatory frameworks. It's not only for government that has to comply to FISMA requirements, but there are so many others, and I have a lot of friends of Veterans Affairs that were showing me shelves of documentation, say, this is FISMA, this is HIPAA, and this is PCI. So which hat do you have today so I can know which documentation paper-based to pull out to show you how compliant we are? It doesn't work. Paper-based is not scaling easily, and it's error-prone, it's laborious, it's not doing well. And risk management is very hard, especially when you don't have everything that you need to automate the process, to make a faster decision, to react faster. And then we all move, and we all love the DevSecOps, and infrastructure as code is very important. So how can we support that? Again, the answer is automation. So I came with the idea, and I ran it first actually by AWS, because it was one of the largest cloud service providers, and one of my friends was working there, and I said, well, what do you think about this idea? And she said, it's fantastic, move forward with that. A machine-readable format that is able to represent in the format of your choice, XML, JSON, and YAML, and I'm giving a little bit away of the presentation, of the details, to allow you to represent the information that you have to deal with, starting with the regulatory framework of choice. So we call it, I like to call it, Cyber Esperanto. We used to refer to this as Rosetta Stone, so any of the other presentations before, we referred to that as a Rosetta Stones, and a lot of that was the ancient stone that was helping for the translation. So a lot of people thought that OSCAL is actually a tool, and we started receiving a lot of requests of downloading and using the OSCAL tool. So that's the reason why at the beginning I pointed to you, so please, please pay attention to the fact that this is a language. So OSCAL sets the foundation for interoperability, security, automation. And we are not taking it easily. So I mentioned earlier that we try to help FedRAMP. So initially I thought that by establishing this project, collaborating with FedRAMP, the best partners that we had in many years, and I'm very pleased with this collaboration, we are going to be able to develop a language that is more flexible than the XML representation that we, NIST, were providing for the previous versions of 853 controls. That other regulatory frameworks are able to use that you all here are able to use that without having to learn another language. So a language that allows you to represent multiple compliance and risk management frameworks. And that was already tested, and we provide that information for 853 controls, Rev 4 and Rev 5, easy transition between them. But we also tested ISO standard, and I'm very pleased to tell you that IEC SC27 Working Group 1 that reviewed and has already out there the 27002 and is doing the 27001 right now. But they already approved for 27002 to be also represented in OSCAL. And the Working Group 1 has that vision that other standards are going to be represented in OSCAL. It stays right now with a headquarter to build their model and to support for representation of the catalog of the standards in machine-readable format in OSCAL. But we want also software and service providers to be able to express the implementation guidance against security controls for their products. So if you deliver a product, and I have many of the entities here that are already doing that or looking into doing that, you can document that your product X implements these controls from multiple baselines if it's configured, and you can describe how in machine-readable format. Those can be used either as playbooks, those can be used as information that you can insert into your automation process to document the security posture of your system. You can share how the security controls are implemented in SSPs. And you can share how you are planning your assessment in machine-readable format, or the assessment results and plan of actions and milestones. We build into the models the traceability from the level of the controls to all the way to all the layers in the stack: control layer, implementation layer, assessment layer. But let's go and dive just a little bit deeper in how we structure those. So in the previous representation, I pointed that we have three major layers, we call them. One is the control layer, and we have two models that we are supporting. So it's the catalog model that, think of it, or the schemas, think of this, that the rules of representing 853 in that language, the rules of representing ISO 27, same one in that language, the rules to represent PCI in that language. That's the very first one, catalog model. But then we work with baselines. We want to tailor or modify these controls, add controls to that. So we have a model that is the profile model, allows you to, using the traceability, to point to controls from catalogs from more than one catalog. So you can think of concatenating catalogs or information, extract information from multiple catalogs and build your profile. And then we have the implementation layer. In the implementation layer, we have two models. It's the component definition model, the one that I mentioned earlier, that all vendors of different products can use to document how their products satisfied different security controls from different regulatory frameworks in machine-readable format. And those component definitions can be used to generate system security plans that are documenting how your system is satisfying or implementing controls against different regulatory frameworks. And then we have the assessment layer. The assessment layer has three models. One is the assessment planning. We made a clear distinction between the planning of the activities of assessing it and the activity itself, because sometimes there are distinctions. So you are doing planning right now, and then during your activities, you have other findings. So we have a model for the assessment planning, a model for assessment results or reports, and then the third model in this layer or category is the POEMs, the plan of actions and milestones, that is directly aligned with your SSPs, and it's useful because it helps you to convey all the findings, all the observations, all the results back to the system owner and align with the SSP, with the system security plan. The models allow you to actually take the system, break it into, or take particular components and do different assessments, assessment plans and assessment results, and then combine them. So you can have different frequencies for different parts of your system, where you decide of how those have to be assessed and what are the results of the assessment, and then they come back and package together. One important thing that I forgot to mention about the profiles. So sometimes you are in a need when you make changes to your controls to have a clear understanding of what those transformations did to your controls. So we have a process in place in tools of resolving, call it resolving the profile, meaning that takes all the controls, the initial controls from wherever you were trying to import them, and applies all the changes that you wanted to your controls, and generates at the end the information in the format of a catalog. So you can derive your own catalogs and provide those to your collaborators or to the entities that need to have that information available. OSCAL 1.0 has been released July 7th, 2021, more than a year ago. And that was the very first official major release of OSCAL. Since then, we had 4 minor releases. So we are waiting for the implementers, for the adopters to tell us if there is anything that we need to do, if there are any bugs, if we need to fix something. We are also planning for additional features. So we'll have around the corner an OSCAL 1.1 that does not break the backwards compatibility, but brings other features. So other models. We have prepared for OSCAL 1.1 a customer responsibility metrics model, or to be more accurate, a security share responsibility, because we want to expand that not just to the customer responsibility, but also to who is responsible for what within the entire stack there. And we also have a mapping model. Mapping model is the model that we design and still expand on, and we need your support to validate what we are doing, that allows you to do the mapping between different regulatory frameworks. And we want to do that by starting with the frameworks themselves, with the regulatory frameworks, create the relation based on anyone's understanding, but then allow for those relations to be tailored when you have your own specific implementation, to be able to tailor that relation to the precision provided by the implementation, and be able to do one assessment with multiple reportings based on whatever framework or regulatory framework you are interested in at that moment. How is OSCAL different? Well, I alluded to some of those a little bit earlier. So no information needs duplication. We build that traceability within the models, unless you want to resolve that with the profiles, when you extract the information and apply the transformations to your controls. Allows for very granular, custom granularity on the controls. So the world before OSCAL was used to report on how the controls are implemented at the control level. But often controls have multiple statements in there that are asking you to do multiple things. Right now, we have unique identifiers of 2 types of them at the very low level, at the statement level. So your assessment can go at that level. Your reporting on the findings can go on that level. That particular statement of the control IA2 is not satisfied. It's not the entire control. And it's not everything within the system, it's just that particular component of the system that has a deficiency. So this is the level that OSCAL allows you to work with, and the granularity that we're providing. I mentioned about the unique identifiers, but also vendors can document their product with the same granularity level. And the system security plans, because of the way we design the models, can be decomposed. So no longer monolithic system security plans and without decomposition into the components of your system. So we allow to represent how controls are implemented at the component of a system level. So I think that this is a great improvement. And if you think that that I'm not right, please come to us and let us know. But based on all my interaction with others out there, that was one of the major important things, that they were absolutely thrilled with the capabilities that OSCAL allows you to have. You can capture the assessment plans, the activities with the cadence that you want, design that, and then execute on that, and use the poems to report with the same frequency, taking that towards whatever we are all looking into today, continuous authorization to operate or certification to operate, because OSCAL is today used internationally as well when they don't use the same terms, the same concepts, but basically what they are doing is similar to what we are doing here in the United States. What can you do with the OSCAL models? I'm going to highlight again. So we have the OSCAL models, the one that I described to you just a little bit earlier, and then you use these models to generate content. So we NIST maintain 853 controls, Rev 4 and Rev 5 in OSCAL. We maintain the baselines in OSCAL. In the catalog of controls we incorporated also, and the catalog in OSCAL allows you to represent objectives for the controls. So 853A, if you are familiar with it, is represented also as part of the OSCAL catalog. And then you can develop editorial tools. Nobody dreams of writing code that machines are understanding or writing information that machines are understanding when you are a human. So editorial tools will help you, in a very nice way, developing that information in machine-readable format. But we also have GRC tools that are consuming the information that you generated as OSCAL. One way of thinking of this is, we all speak English here. If I switch it to Romanian to origin, you are not going to understand me. But even if I speak a broken English without grammar, without the OSCAL models, you might still not understand what I'm trying to convey. So OSCAL models give you that grammar for you to build the OSCAL content, the literature that you want, the novel, but then you need the tools. So are we going to use that information, the novel that you wrote? You can have it in PDF, or you can have it in Word, or you can have it in any other LaTeX format. Those are the formats. But you are using also tools. You're not going to look into that text in the raw format that Microsoft Word is using if you open it with another editor. So those are the layers or the aspects of OSCAL that I'm hoping right now are clear to the ones that did not know anything about OSCAL. We have a website, and I highlighted on top there the URL, but it's very, very easy to remember. Just everybody knows NIST is www.nist.gov, but then add a /OSCAL there, and it will take you to the real page, the website where we have everything in there. One that I love very much there, so the entire specification in there, and the outlines are there in very details. What are the assemblies that every single model have in there? You can click on them and it will take you to the specifications, to the references that are telling you what type of data can be used there. We do have a section for tutorials that we continue to develop. We are a little bit behind with that. We do provide links to all the previous presentations, to our workshops, and to other sources of information available. We do have there tools and libraries. So some of our collaborators that came forward and said, can you please post my tools so for the world to know that I'm working in this field? So some of them are posted there. There are many more others there, but most likely, they're not there because they do not come to us. We cannot list anybody unless they are asking us to be listed. How can you contribute? We work with the community at large, and we have many contributors to the project that are doing that either on their personal capacity or because their businesses are very interested in OSCAL and they need that. They are implementing it, they are supporting it, so they are collaborating with us. We have, every week, we have a meeting with the community, but the type of meeting alternates. So 1 week is with the developers, the other ones is explaining the models and the model review with entities that are using the models. We do organize monthly mini workshops, and we just had this month, it was AWS that presented. So you can collaborate with us on Gitter. We are on Gitter. You can collaborate with us on GitHub. So please come forward. If you have questions, we have OSCAL@NIST.gov. And some of our collaborators, and this slide is from March, because that's when I asked, do you want us to list you here officially that you are implementing or supporting OSCAL? And these are the ones that came forward. As I said, there are many others that I'm aware of, but unless they are coming forward to us, we cannot list them. But you can see they're on top, AWS. That's why we're here, right? So that's why you are here too. With that, I'd like to pass on the mic to Matt Duncan, that will tell you how AWS use OSCAL to implement and submit to FedRAMP the first, did I say too much? The first AWS package SSP in OSCAL. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yorga. It's a hard act to follow. Anyway, as Dr. Yorga introduced me, I'm Matthew Donkin. I work for AWS, obviously. And let's talk about something. You know, everybody here, it's lunchtime, might be a little sluggish, but what gets you really excited? Is it paperwork? Does paperwork get people excited here? You get up in the morning like, man, I really want to do some paperwork. Documentation is just the thing, right? Anybody? Show of hands. Spreadsheets, anything, you know, like it's just such a great thing to have. And they do, you know, like Saturday night, just paperwork. It's great stuff. And if that doesn't get you excited, security, right? You put them together, you got security documentation. Then, I mean, security should get you excited. You're at Reinforce, right? I mean, at least we're all excited about security, but there's just that onerous task of paperwork. And on top of that, you have issues with transcribing some of this paperwork, right? Not everything is in a machine-readable format, and it requires a human to take it from one source and put it into another source. And what happens when you introduce that human in the middle of that transcribing? Errors, right? We're all human. We make mistakes. You're transcribing 700-something pages. There's going to be some issues, right? And looking at some of these problems and how everybody's so excited about paperwork, which nobody is, we were really excited when we heard about OSCAL and how that machine-readable format could be universal, and we kind of start seeing that light at the end of the tunnel for all that paperwork. Now, speaking of paperwork, we'll continue with the documentation challenge, right? AWS has a lot of documentation. I know you think like, man, they're kind of a smaller company, maybe a day and a half to get this transcribed or something. You're gonna be wrong in that. I know I'm being a little facetious, but still, it's a large workload. I mean, our system security plans alone, we have 2 SSPs for FedRAMP, and we have the monthly updates, we have the annual assessments, we have POAMs, we have the CCGs, or the customer responsibility guides, the responsibility matrix, and the customer responsibility guides. And for our SSP alone, we have appendices. We have the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS appendices. We have a GovCloud appendices. The GovCloud SSP, IaaS SSP, is 735 pages long. Is that a little bit of documentation? You know, I mean, if you're one of those people, nobody raised their hand here, which is good. But if you're one of those people that really like documentation, you're like, yeah, that's awesome. Give that giant thing to me, and I will put that into another format for us to use. Now, for our implementation of OSCAL, right, we're going with the Exacta tool that TELUS developed, partnering with them for their government risk and compliance tool. And it provides multiple classification levels. And one of the reasons why we did this is what we want to maintain documentation across all classification levels, so it's the same for our customers. So be it in secret or top secret, we eventually want to produce the same documentation that we do in commercial and GovCloud. And Dr. Yorga went over the templates or models in her presentation, and we're going to go with the FedRAMP, like the FedRAMP template because we are piloting this through FedRAMP. And I provided a QR code there that you go to their GitHub to check out their template and like everything they have there, which is a lot. They do have a lot on that site, on their GitHub. So I'll just leave this up here for a couple minutes so you can get the QR code if you're interested. If not, just tell me to move on. But next up, we're going to discuss some of the benefits AWS customers have what we expect when we finish the implementation and the pilot through OSCAL. All right, some of the benefits. So first, our current process. So now let's discuss the current process of receiving security documentations. First, a customer must get access to a digital rights management system, which already requires what? More paperwork, right? And after that, they have to look at a DRM protected document that might even not allow for copy and pasting, and then you're doing direct transcribing, which could take a very, very long time. And as you can see, I have that number up there, 4,160 workforce hours, right, to create and maintain an ATO package. And that's a significant number, and it's like, what? That's like 2 full-time employees over a year. And we came about that number through our own experiences in taking this information and putting it into a GRC tool, right, and transcribing, and through various customers telling us how long this process was taking them. And enter OSCAL, the simplification, right? So now you just have to access a file repository, download the file, and upload it into an enabled solution, and you get your inheritance and all of your documentation where hopefully it's needed, right? So you will probably have to review some stuff and make sure everything's going in the right place, but it takes the human error out of that beginning transcription and makes everything so much simpler. That for AWS's side of the documentation for inheritance on our controls, we estimate 20 to 40 hours, and that's for review as well, which is a significant improvement. Now, there will still be other aspects to the ATO process that customers will have to handle on their own, but for our side, we want to make it as easy and seamless for the customer as possible. And next, I'll be talking about some of our successes. As Dr. Yorga said, we were the first CSP to produce an OSCAL SSP and hand it over to the FedRAMP PMO. This was a long time in coming. It took some work, but partnering with Telos and producing that CSP in OSCAL was pretty significant, and we are continuing to work on it and through iterations, improvements, to get it to a place where our customers could use it. And we're able to provide that feedback, like I was talking about, with industry partners to the FedRAMP PMO. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on when we talk about some of the challenges that we had to overcome. And we've also partnered with Accenture, they're a 3PAO, to provide a complete OSCAL authorization package, and we hope to do this by November 2022. And so they're going to provide us with the SAP and the SAR in OSCAL format, so based on our SSP in OSCAL. And we're also working on our POAMs as well, so complete authorization package, we hope, by November 2022. And here's a timeline. I know it's rather redundant. Q4 is what we're aiming for everything. And our system security plan is complete, like I said, even though we are working on iterations to improve it too with the FedRAMP, our partners at FedRAMP. So the challenges. All right, so OSCAL SSP outputs. So one of the first challenges we ran into was the differences in those models. The FedRAMP template has some specific changes that do not align with the NIST template, and the outputs will verify on the NIST tooling, but not on the FedRAMP tooling, and vice versa. And that's because FedRAMP has specific guidance and specific items they need on their SSPs. So some of these are not really applicable to a hyperscaling CSP. So for instance, one of the main focuses that we're trying to get changed is the requirement to say how many people are on your system at one time. So you can see, like, for hyperscaling SSP, CSP, I could put in any number I wanted to, right? It could be accurate that second. The very next second, it's an inaccurate input. So, and there's no not applicable. You can't just put not applicable. We tried. They said no. So that is one of the things we're kind of working through. And on top of that, there's another requirement of everybody's role in your environment. So if you can't even figure out how many people are in your environment at any one time, given the amount of usage in that environment, like a hyperscaling CSP, how do you produce a list of the roles of everybody within that environment? So it's those deltas that we're trying to work through, and there's others. I'm just giving a couple small examples. And we're trying to just smooth everything out because there is a difference in the documentation and aligning the deltas to the new methodology for security documentation. And that's a challenge. Bringing together what is required from government agencies and the old SSP and the way that they want their SSP to, like, the new model that OSCAL presents, which is more of a modern model, is very difficult. So the AWS SSPs with several dependencies are not conducive to the true efficiency of what OSCAL could bring, but we have to have this specific format for our FedRAMP approvals. And that configuration, configuring it so it will become efficient with OSCAL and at the same time meet those requirements for FedRAMP, it's going to require a little bit of imagination and a lot of work. And that's one of the things we continue to work for, and hopefully we'll get it finished sometime soon. But we want to work towards that truly machine-readable format for our controlled documentation. That's all we want to do, is just make it, here's your document. Oh, thanks. Right into your tool, and now you have everything you need for your ATO from our end and your inheritances. And now I'm going to bring up Amber Pearson to talk about, thank you, automation of security authorizations.
Thanks. Alrighty, good afternoon, and thanks, Matt. I'm really excited to be here with you all and part of such a distinguished panel. You heard from Dr. Yorga and Matt Duncan about OSCAL, what it is, and the AWS implementation and lessons learned. So my focus is going to be, what are we doing with AWS as a next step? What's the path forward in automation for security authorization from end to end? So solutioning with customer obsession. I am fully acquainted with the juggling the relationship between governance and security. I have over 18 years of security compliance background with the federal government before joining industry. So I am an empathetic ally in this fight for security compliance and making sure that it can get automated. And I give you a little bit about this background of myself, just to give you an idea of AWS and how it's using customers, formerly federally regulated customers like myself, to really look at automation and how to move it forward. Through some of these experiences, we'll be wanting to hear from you all. I am going to put out a shameless plug. There is a survey at the end of this, and we really want to capture your voice. And we really want to make sure that we understand the current friction points and how to move the needle forward. So industry consistently innovates and adapts to ever-changing technology landscape and its protection mechanisms. This is why automation is a focus point for us. So when we think about evolving governance like zero trust architecture, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and clarifying the security risk posture, all this focus provides us the capability to start moving towards automation sooner than later. So when considering the requirements of authorization automation, streamlining security documentation through machine-readable language and standardized schema models like OSCAL is where we're really trying to go. So one of the larger burdens of our customers, and you've heard it from Dr. Yorga and Matt as well, is security authorization documentation, how long it takes, and making sure that it's accurate in real time, and that you're able to move forward quickly through the authorization process. And so we're going to attempt to address this problem and these friction points through automation. So driving automation forward, AWS is a catalyst that is moving forward with the compliance of actualizing conceptual models like OSCAL. So along with our partners, AWS is leading and impacting large parts of the automation initiative and an innovative approach in many ways. So we understand machine-readable language is the first step to streamlining that documentation. And so this is why efforts to actualize conceptual models, NIST OSCAL, deserves our attention, our support, and resources. Our customers have various governance, risk, and compliance tools, GRC tools, and they have very nuances amongst different agencies. And so as we continue to drive automation forward, we look to our partners and our customers globally to make sure, again, we're capturing those friction points and know how to move forward with automation. So these, we're looking to expand security and compliance automation in other frameworks such as ISO, COVID. But we do recognize and understand that actualizing these concepts and implementing these solutions require collaboration with you all and with our industry partners. So we have a call to industry. We're looking to collaborate before the end of the year as AWS understands that increasing adoption requires that a customer-obsessed approach in reducing friction points. To address the friction points through security compliance and the ingestion of the documentation, through automation will require this adoption throughout industry. This type of collaboration that I'm talking about is going to be a part of a summit before the end of the year. And we'll be looking to host and collaborate with a lot of you all and other industry partners and agencies. The expected outcome of this partnership is twofold. It's to develop a level of consistency and to drive automation solution faster. So for consistency, there is a level of expectation that we all are familiar with. GRC tools are very different from one another. And so we're taking this into account. Matt also talked through this earlier. And so the intended outcome is to have that framework that we can use amongst all GRC tools, no matter which one you're utilizing in your day-to-day business to meet your mission needs. So let's all get up from underneath the paperwork that Matt alluded to earlier, and let's really start driving towards more automation. So finally, the overall objective of transformation with the security authorization is to have a more intentional focus and collaboration in these specific areas. Enhancing customer authorization process through policy as code. So in order to automate authorization, the need for artifacts to be machine readable is the first step. And OSCAL strengthens those conversations to automate the security documentation. So think of it as your security engineers, your information system security managers, they will no longer have their burden of creating documentation just to support an authorization. We're really going to start looking at policy as code and enforcing that through, hey, I developed a policy as a code. I can now walk away knowing that my policies have been automatically enforced and are now measurable. Another area that we're getting to is zero trust tailored controls rather than framework controls. And so we've all been recognizing the new guidance that's come out, M2209 as an example. It gets very specific and granular in the security controls area. So one of the things that calls out for us is leading us down a path of talking about encrypting at the DNS level. While previously we all looked at perimeter defense as one of the focus point, and now there's been a cultural shift. It's getting down to the application layer as well. So we're looking to really enforce that, the zero trust architecture through the automation efforts. Another area is prescriptive security controls that are automatically enforceable and measurable. Talked a little bit about that already. But through this development of OSCAL, AWS is taking an unmanaged schema of 900 plus security controls and changing it into a managed schema list, structured schema list. An example would be multi-factor authentication. It's no longer acceptable, like I said, at the network layer or moving it to be the application level. And M2209 is allowing us that capability to drive automation fast forward. So as we getting to automating compliance to gain protection of the cyberspace, specific areas, AWS consider this as day one. We are very excited that the government is leading the charge and wanting machine-readable language and introduce it into the blueprint and the fabric of security authorizations. And so we got this quote, again, learning and innovating go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow, which is why we're really leaning forward and hard in the automation space, utilizing machine-readable language. And so this does conclude our portion of the brief. We wanted to make sure we had enough time for you all to ask questions from the panelists. And so I'll invite the panelists back up so that we can take questions. And here is our contact information. Feel free to capture our LinkedIn to connect with us at any time. And I did do a shameless plug earlier. There is a survey. We really want to make sure we capture your voice. So we'll go ahead and start with questions from the audience. It's a little difficult to see, but I think there's a mic being brought to you.
Check, check. Please stand up, announce your name, your company, and your question. Hands? And if you like, point to who would you like to answer your question. If not, the group will determine.
Can't really see anybody. Oh, there we go.
Hi, my name is Hidayatullah Ehsan. Company is Tech Icon. I have a few questions. One of the questions is for Matthew. You mentioned OSCAL challenges. Is it safe to say that they were more FedRAMP interaction challenges than OSCAL? Because, I mean, going back to what Dr. Igor was saying was, it is still a language. So as far as the challenges in the languages, the ones that you mentioned didn't feel the same. So is there, the consumer of the data is saying, hey, you need to have these deviations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So they put more requirements within their model or their template. So
I can also explain. I don't know if everyone can hear me. So OSCAL has a lot of hooks in there to extend for extensions for specific things. So there is a core OSCAL, and then FedRAMP has an extension. And the information, which is very good for them, the lowest hanging fruit that FedRAMP is doing with OSCAL is validation of the packages. Because they have automation and tools of validating the packages, you cannot cut corners if they have those extensions and restrictions in the package. When you have the information in Word, so many hundreds of pages, somebody was reviewing, you could cut corners, you could negotiate things could slip through. Now, there's this aspect. So the world needs to understand, I'm not saying that they don't need to evolve also, to allow for a little bit more flexibility, because the templates were created to try to mimic the templates that they had before. Or before, everybody was using templates in Word or filling in the information by hand, and then somebody was reviewing. Right now, those templates were converted, and there are tools for validating the information to support the lower granularity, but then they have those extensions where they ask for additional fields, and there is an extension model that allows you to do that, and there are other entry points for extending the core OSCAL. So it's, how should I put that? Then there are the GRC tools that if they don't understand properly where to put the fields, then some of those validations can fail. I'm not saying it's easy to transition, but the return on investment, once you understand what you have to do, once you have the best way in place, then you can see all the benefits that Matt and Amber highlighted earlier.
Thank you. I'm David Lee with Capital One in cloud platform security. Automation, I'm all in. It's great. Amber, this was a lot of talking about FedRAMP. What is the program or the plan for addressing this for the commercial cloud?
Yeah, so we're definitely taking that approach as we're breaking it off in phases, if you will. FedRAMP is, like Matt had mentioned earlier, it's our pilot, and we're moving fast in that area. So definitely a part of the summit, we're going to start looking at different frameworks to include in marching forward. So yes.
Hey, my name is Kishore. I'm from Fannie Mae. We just started our continuous ATO journey. We are using FedRAMP moderate, 853 specifically. So when it comes to SSPs, is AWS going to deliver them by capability, by each service? What we're trying to do is we call a specific implementation of AWS capability. Let's say example of RDS or Redshift. We call them as a technical capability inside our company. And we do an SSP for each capability of how we consumed that service inside our organization. So can we assume that we can get an SSP so that we can inherit those controls behind the scenes?
For each service.
For each service.
That's the plan. It's a crawl, walk, run right now, right? And our SSPs have to be in that FedRAMP template. That's kind of the overall arcing for this pilot, right? That's the overall arcing concern that we have to make it fit with that template. Like Dr. Yorga said, they have like extra extensions on there, which they aren't great with hyperscaling CSPs like the users. But eventually tying each, like say like a SSP that is a service-based SSP instead of an IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, right? And that's where I think you were getting at, where you can just go in and say, hey, I'm using this, boom, click on it, and you can import that into your system automatically through the machine-readable format. That is the end game, right? That's the running, right? We're still in the crawl game here, but eventually that's where we see the future going with the automation and simplification for our customers.
So, for example, when we consume IAM in our SSM, so some of the AIM controls we inherit from AWS, right? So
Yeah.
So one of the innovative things that we put in OSCAL there, we have support for, we refer to it as leveraging authorizations. So AWS can, in their SSP, mark the controls that are inherited and mark with export tags, if you want, the information that can be exported for the consumer and what is their responsibility and what are the controls that can be inherited. So those controls you can choose to inherit. It's not prescriptive, or you can choose to mitigate them differently and you can document that in your SSP. That's where, as I mentioned before, OSCAL gives you the flexibility that whatever OSCAL gives you, you want to get the best out of it. You have to start crawling a little bit. So OSCAL allows you to have a single component in your system, this system, and go back to where you were, the ice age, right? Or you can move forward and start looking and decomposing and allowing the consumer to click, I want AWS managed blockchain. What are the controls that I'm inheriting if I build a solution on that? That's where we want to be, but we have to keep, the target in front of us and run there, or start crawling, learn how to walk properly there, get the proper tools, because if the tools are not helping you because they do not understand, then you might have a little bit of back and forth, or more back and forth, depending.
Hi, Dave Martin with IBM Federal Consulting Services. A question for Dr. Yorga. How does OSCAL plan to address assessment of technical controls? Are there plans to integrate with industry for like vulnerability assessment tools and things like that to export into OSCAL? What are the future plans for that?
Well, the assessment results model has assemblies in there that allows you to capture all this information. And because you said that you are from IBM, please go and look at IBM Trestle, Compliance Automation. They're one of our closest collaborators with, and they have a process in place using OSCAL, supporting DevSecOps.
So follow up to that, like, are there plans? So I've seen IBM Trestle actually, and
Good.
are there any future plans for like widespread integration with vendors, right? So you've got a bunch of different security tools that you're getting data out of, and all of those kind of contribute to your ATO. So is there a plan to integrate with those vendors so that all of that can be exported in OSCAL?
We are developing OSCAL as Nest and allow everyone to use it. Now there are vendors. So Dr. Saylor, Anka, that is leading the effort with IBM Trestle, does a lot of work with us and integrates and has an entire process in place. But just to let you know how we collaborate with her and with others, we are working towards support for what we refer to them as rules. So metrics for the controls.
Okay.
To augment existing OSCAL with rules and ways of checking and documenting those checks. So you'll have them. Hopefully OSCAL 1.1.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Ziola. I have a consulting company called CISO, but I do a lot of work in open source, particularly in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and the OpenSSF. And in the CNCF, we currently have a project to take what we consider these cloud native controls and automate the assessment of them and store the information of that assessment in an OSCAL format. I've been seeing for a long time this kind of cross-mapping where you say it works 853 and also ISO 27001 and COBIT 5, but for the latter two, I haven't actually seen that information be released publicly, and I understand there's some limitations on how that information might be able to be shared. My question is, so as a part of my open source efforts, we are going to be developing and open sourcing that, but I'm also not interested in reinventing the wheel. Are there plans for other frameworks to be released, those controls to be released in OSCAL in open source format or for free?
We cannot release what we don't own. So it's as clear as that. We tested, though, internally, the language itself, but there are entities that are already using that for their GRC tools. And the next month, we have a presentation from RegScale that claims that can do a conversion of any standard. If you have a license to use, they can convert that in OSCAL for you of any catalog of controls. I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to the presentation next month to see that in action. But like I said, one is the content, and we do manage, NIST manages the OSCAL content for the catalog 853, REF4, and REF5, and the baselines. FedRAMP manages the content for their baselines. REF4 is out there, REF5 is in the process because they're finalizing their baselines. I know other entities that generated a catalog of controls, but if they are not public, then entities cannot do that. So ISO has to generate their own and make available their own catalog of controls because you have to pay a fee to use the ISO standard. So we tested, but we cannot give anyone a catalog of controls that we don't manage the data, the content.
Hi, my name is Wasim, Ramper.io, and great presentation, great collaboration. Congratulations, you guys did a great job. All I want to tell Matthew and Amber, we have a solution for you. For your automation, we have a solution, and we need to have a separate conversation. And as Dr. Lorgas mentioned, we didn't ask for it. We need to ask, like, we need to put our solution into your catalogs. So it does automate everything that FedRAMP does. We have automated that, and we have used OSCAL in order to, just do all of it. So we will have a conversation, and we have a solution for you guys. Thank you.
Alrighty, so that's all we can do. We're running out of time. So thank you all for the collaboration and the questions.
We have one more question.
One more? Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay, I'll try and make it quick. Sorry.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Pavel from CrowdStrike. It's clear that you're talking a lot about maturity and trying to pitch OSCAL and adoption. Do you have some key indicators that might be helpful in determining that it's too early for a company or an organization to adopt OSCAL at this time? Like, are there any signs that would point to maybe you shouldn't look at this right now because of the complexity?
And is that the question for me? I had the slide there with the ones that came forward to tell us that they are supporting OSCAL already. What else I can tell you is that OSCAL is internationally adopted from Australia, New Zealand to UK, Israel, and in Europe, there is, you can look up for yourself, the project Medina that is doing cloud services certification for different controls that NITSA identified for the Cybersecurity Act, and the language, the format that they are using there is OSCAL. So their set of controls brings forward controls from 853, brings forward controls from ISO, from BSI 5, the German catalog. They are 18 months, they just had the 18-month review within, and they have to complete a pilot. They have another 18 months, I believe. It has been very well received. Medina is the name of the project, and the lead is Dr. Luna Jesus Luna.
Great, great. What a wonderful presentation. Let's give our presenters one big round of applause.
Thank you.
Matthew and Amber
Thank
from
you, Matt.
AWS and Dr. Orga
Thank you.
from the Department of Commerce. Thanks for coming.
Good job.